Good evening, everyone. Welcome to episode number 9 of Restitching the Tapestry with your hosts, Donny Winter and my dear friend, Ari Whipple. Hello, Ari. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am delightful. So, before we get things started, as we're waiting for people to um, join in, let's have a toast to Mothra's birthday. Clink.
Clink.
Clink. She's 59 years old, and I've been just trying to celebrate that as I go throughout the day today. So,
Happy birthday, Mothra.
oh, happy birthday, Mothra. It's been a good 59 years.
It's been a very good 59 years.
I wouldn't know all the 59 years, but So we have Igny on so far. Igny won't be on for a few more minutes because there is a friend that's going to be on a game, I think. Yep. Taylor's here. Taylor, long time no see. I saw Taylor earlier today.
Hi,
It was
Taylor.
lovely. David's here.
Hi, David.
here for the Mothra and the Shobijin. Yes. If I had more drinks in me, I would do a complimentary performance of the Mothra song, but we're not going to do that.
Aww.
We don't need that on social media. Oh, my goodness. All right. So, tonight is a very interesting episode because we're going to be talking about the applications, the advantages and perils of social media. And we're going to share some of our experiences with various social media platforms and various decisions that we've made based on what we've learned. So we're hoping that it'll be pretty informative and maybe hopefully there will be something that you'll take away from this. So before we um, go any further, I'm going to read our show's mission statement. So many witness different atrocities, large or small, that fray the social fabric around us. Much of the time, many may feel powerless and know not how to address those things. And as time has gone on, this fray has gotten worse because of the rise of social media. People being able to share in collective trauma, being able to watch it go viral and experience this mass scale collective grief or outrage or any other emotions at the same time. So that begs the question of what can we do to mend the communities that have seen considerable tragedy, most of which has been created by privileged groups who don't really acknowledge their personal involvement. So, together with this series, our goal is to restitch the tapestry through conversation, creativity, action, and education. Okay. So, obviously based on that, like since social media was a huge aspect of that little blurb, understandably social media and those who participate in various platforms are in essence part of communities, right? So it's important to talk about these platforms that give us a place to create something that almost acts as an extension of ourselves and the communities beyond social media that we connect with. Okay. So I think first and foremost, Ari, I think it would be really beneficial if you would start us out and talk a little bit about various examples of how social media has kind of taken the limelight with regard to news over the past few years.
So, okay, in the last few years, well, there was the Russian hacking scandal. That's something that came up in 2016. Uh, there was they had Russian hackers had purchased about 3,500 Facebook ads. This Russian-based internet research agency, um, Robert Mueller, had found that, and they were seeking to kind of influence the election. This is according to USA Today. They had put an article out about this, and the ads were kind of they went from anywhere banal business promotions to Pokemon to anything as inflammatory as race-related tensions. So some dealt with race directly, others dealt with racial and religious baggage, and they focused on protests over policing, over the wall debate and US border, and Mexico relations in the Muslim community. So what they were trying to do is just trying to like kind of incite people and trying to like divide people on issues and trying to like get people to really be very divisive and trying to sway the election towards uh towards Trump, and get people in a divisive state, and really just sway the election, and it
Right.
worked.
And scarily, it's scary that um that happened, because the thing is, social media has become so commonplace that people aren't always conscious of what they might read or what might affect them, right? So, like, a lot of these messages almost come off subliminally. And I mean, I think a lot of these outside influencers understand that those small subliminal messages can be very much
Well, and you don't know
influential.
who is buying. When you look at Facebook and you see an ad, you don't necessarily know who is buying the ad, you just see an ad. And so there's not a lot of transparency with Facebook ads. Um, and there's still not a lot of transparency, you just see an ad. So I I I don't even know if it's gotten a lot better, but it definitely affects your behavior, and it definitely changes your behavior in a lot of ways, and it definitely makes you think a certain way. And when you click an article or an ad, or a certain, it affects you mentally. Like you if you see an ad, you may believe that as the gospel truth, especially if you're uh uh you know easy to persuasion. So and a lot of people who were seeing these ads were persuasive, especially if you see them over and over and over again. So
Well, and like additionally too, because I know like Facebook and other social media platforms use algorithms. So, and I know this is going to transition into talking about another aspect of social media here in a little bit, but when a person clicks on an article about a particular topic or an ad, the algorithm is programmed to examine that and be like, oh, well, this person's interested in this topic or these tags, so on and so forth. So then it immediately, well, maybe not immediately, but gradually starts populating similar things. And kind of going back to our mission statement too, the fact that these types of, ads or messages, the fact that they can be sent out on such a mass scale and be reshared by people on such a mass scale, like, that's just going to add to the influence. Because if you see a friend who you think is reliable sharing something that is not factual or misleading, well, you're more apt to believe that friend at face value, as opposed to doing some extra research to establish the credibility of the thing that you're reading.
it's true. My sister had a coworker share a conspiracy theory with her about how Hollywood had a pedophilia ring that was like Pizzagate, and we know Pizzagate is false. It's just a conspiracy theory, and that there was a Hollywood like Pizzagate going around, and that Tom
Oh.
Hanks was involved in this Pizzagate, and that all these people were involved, including Oprah, who was on house arrest, and that all of these people were involved in this, and that she shared this with her. And my sister was like very confused, because she was like, I don't know what to believe. And I was like, it's false, it's false, it's false. And I kept telling her it was false, and she just she was like so confused for a second, and she like had this this cognitive dissonance because she had somebody who's sharing this with her who was telling her it was real, and then she had me telling her that it was false. And it was just like she was like she had these like dual perspectives of like, this is true, this is false, this is true, this is false. And it was like,
Hmm. I've had family members do that too, and it's really unsettling because um, it's almost like it's almost a different world, like that they've stumbled into. I'm looking at the comments really quickly because I want to make sure that we're not
Igni
missing
needs
anything.
context of what he walked
Okay.
into.
So Igni, right now we've basically been talking about how social media has been used in the past by various entities to influence people's actions and thought processes. And this largely has been circulating around the 2016 election that we've been talking about. Let's see. Taylor says, it's not okay that social media twisted the election, but unfortunately, I think there are enough idiots that the result would have been the same. And we have definitely seen election tampering in the past without the need of social media. So that is very true. I just think that perhaps in some ways, social media makes it a little bit more
Ramped up.
easy or ramped up, or maybe even a little bit more insidious because it's something that people typically think that has a lot of security, and these outside entities could be circumventing such security. David says there is a sci-fi show years back called Capricorn. I feel like it had a lot of good social commentary on the shape of things to come. I've been seeing this show pop up for me, but I've not watched it yet. And both Ari and I are huge sci-fi fans, so maybe we'll have to give that one
I've heard about Caprica. I don't know if I've necessarily watched it.
Yeah, I've heard of it too. Tiffany Gray's here. Hello, my dear. It's good to see you.
Hi, Tiffany.
Yay. Okay. So, Igni, I hope that gave a little bit more context. But, I mean, we're going to be covering a lot of ground during this episode. Granted, I think we typically do for each episode. But so if anything comes up and anybody needs any like extra clarification, or if you need something explained in a different way, don't hesitate to ask, because we love being able to kind of flesh things out and explain things in different ways. Sometimes it helps us learn something different about a topic as well. Okay. So you mentioned conspiracy theories. Let's talk a little bit more about conspiracy theories. Are there any other conspiracy theories that you've seen that have been circulated on social media platforms?
Uh, whew, um,
There's so many,
not,
honestly.
I don't know. We talked about a lot of conspiracy theories last week with coronavirus. So
Mhm.
a lot of coronavirus conspiracy theories were spread around. Um, I talked about Jaron Lanier last week, and he said that only 3 to 5% of conspiracy theories need to be effective in order to have people commit social suicide. So, like, 3 to 5% of the population really need to believe a conspiracy theory in order for it to actually work. So,
It's interesting. Like, let's talk about the term social suicide for a second, because that's an interesting term. How would you define that?
It's like it's like when society starts to really just go downhill and just starts to like actually like kind of like eat away at itself and just like it's like it's like brain worms, like
Like a
people.
mass, it almost sounds like a massive loss of objectivity.
It is. It's a massive loss of objectivity, and it's like people start acting on things. It's like when somebody walks into a Washington D.C. Pizza restaurant with a gun because they heard a Pizzagate theory and they want to demand to see what's behind the counter because they heard a conspiracy theory that there was about um, a child pornography ring, or people start setting fire to 5G towers because they heard that it caused people to get sick, or things like that, where it's just people start degrading socially, and it's causing people to act upon it, and it's causing us to slowly degrade in a way that's like not healthy, and it's just like we're slowly burning out on from the inside out, because
Right.
we're believing these conspiracy theories and doing things that are stupid.
Yeah, it's almost like a snowball effect,
Yeah,
like this, an avalanche starts with a pebble or a small chunk, and then once that misinformation is spread and people start continuing to perpetuate it and acting on it, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and more destructive as it goes along. So,
right.
um,
And then more and more people believe it because people are acting upon it, so it must be real.
mhm, exactly. And it's interesting because I know honestly, conspiracy theories can take on so many different forms. They can be on a smaller scale, they can be on a larger scale. Like, to give you a couple of political related conspiracy theories that I've noticed, um, mostly pertaining to Michigan and our governor, I've seen a lot of people who have opposed her legislation to help protect Michiganders, and they've been claiming that, oh well, she's secretly using this emergency power to create her own dictatorship here in Michigan, saying very extreme things like that about a person's intent. That can be considered obviously a conspiracy theory, because when people hear it, if they are adamant about not being a fan of the governor, they're going to pick up on it and and then run away with it. And I've seen other ones where, oh, the governor isn't even heeding her own laws. She's like imposing all of these things on people, but she's traveling and having parties and stuff on her own. And it's just like, why are you saying, you're trying to create a conspiracy theory to ruin a person's credibility because you don't agree with what they're doing necessarily, right? And of course, there's no basis, no source material, nothing um, backing it. And one way you can easily identify people who are conspiracy theorists, if they don't make it obvious, which usually they do make it pretty obvious, would be how they react to you if you present them factual information. Okay. I've I know that most conspiracy theorists, from my own experience, will react by trying to discredit you. They will immediately look at whatever sources or materials that you give them and simply dismiss it and say, oh well, you're just biased or you're over dramatic. They try to get jibes or jabs in that seek to invalidate you. It's a very much a deflection. Actually,
Sort of like the Flat Earth Society. They like, well,
mhm,
I see it with my own eyes. It must be the truth. And it's like, well, no, you have to go beyond that and like go by like an objective truth of like it goes beyond what you can see with your own eyes. You have to go beyond these like weird experiments that you're doing that don't make any sense, and have to do
exactly.
like these experiments that they're doing are just weird.
David left a comment saying that it's gaslighting. Exactly. 1000%. That's what it is. Because when people don't know, or if they can't respond to you or add to the conversation, their goal is to discredit you or to make you question your reality or question your own intellect, which is definitely gaslighting.
I
Definitely
mean,
something that happens often, far too often.
but I remember it started like it goes back several years. Some of the earliest forms of social media talking about conspiracy theories. Remember 9/11? They talked about the steel beams not being melted by the jet fuel. I feel like that was one of the earliest forms of social media talking about conspiracy theories. They talked about it all over YouTube. They talked about it on the early days of Facebook, and it got spread around like wildfire back in those days.
Oh,
And
yeah,
it
it was all over message boards too, I remember, because message boards before social media as it is now, that used to be what social media was.
right.
Mhm.
And
So, yeah.
it was talked about for quite a while, and it didn't matter how many times scientists came out. They did huge Newsweek and Scientific American articles about how, of course, this is ridiculous. Of course, that this is nonsensical. The jet fuel blew off the the protections against the casings, and then it melted the steel beams, and that it weakened the structures, and that the structure just could not hold out, and that it collapsed. And they're like, no, it had to be explosives. It had to be explosives. It was definitely an inside job. And like, it just, people would not let this go. They
Mhm.
would play videos, they made conspiracy theories. There was that movie Loose Change. It just like, it was out of control, out of control.
Yep.
People would just not let it go for, and still to this day, I bet there are still people to this day who believe that. And it's
Oh,
like,
yeah. Oh, yeah, for
it,
sure.
it's so bizarre in my mind that there
You
are people.
know, the I feel like conspiracy theories have a lot more foundation if there's actual evidence, and there is not. You know,
But
like
they'll make evidence. They'll
yeah, they
make evidence
create
to, but they create the, in their mind it's evidence to them. And what they do is they create this form of evidence, and to them it is real evidence. So to them it is real, but
Mhm.
it doesn't, because they see something that they'll slow down planes, and they'll do the early version of news reports, and they'll do like so it's like when there's all this confusion and they don't know what's going on. So that's the reality, that's the truth. And like later reports, when they get all of the evidence, is like, that's not the real truth. That's not the reality. The early stuff, when everybody's confused and like not sure what's going on, that's not the truth.
Right. Yep. Tiffany says that I don't understand conspiracy theories. They make my brain hurt. Yes, same.
But it's like, it's just, to me it's an acceptance of a different set of reality rules. I'm like, people are just living in their own set of reality. I'm like, they,
Oh, it just it proves the power of the mind and how much it can what it can do to convince people that something is real or not. You know, because like it's very much like this domino effect. A thought is implanted in someone's mind, they kind of carry it away, and if they don't use or if they don't like peer review it or have it stacked against, actual evidence or proof, it kind of takes this tumbling type of motion and it just gets bigger and bigger, kind of like what we were talking about earlier.
yeah, and it can get out of control, like, and that's what I talked about social suicide, is that like, if you get just a small number of people to believe something, it can just spiral out of control, and then it's just like a huge number of people believe this, and then it's just, it's a social suicide. Everybody, a lot of people believe this information, and it's wrong, and there's no objectivity, and it's like, there's it's total insanity. It's that that people are believing things that are like completely off base from what is object object reality. And that's what Jaron Lanier is saying, is like, or Jaron Lanier is saying, is like, a few people need to walk away, at least a few people need to walk away from social media and say, this is this is wrong. I need to walk back a few steps and go, hey, hey now.
Right.
Let's let's go back to reality here
Mhm.
and find our way back and be human again.
If only people would do that more often, right? So looking at the next, I think we've touched on our next bullet point because we always have notes for our shows, by the way. I think we touched on the next one, but is there anything else you wanted to add about um, like personal data and social media?
Oh, so basically, let's talk about personal data for a minute. So your data is like super important. And like your data is like constant. Like your data is being used against you all the time. It's like every click, every ad, every time you look at something, like your eyes are being tracked by the camera on your computer and on your phone. It's because your phone is a learning machine. It looks at the habits of everything you watch, everything you look at, the keywords of what you say because your microphone is listening. Um, it's just scary how accurate um, the ads are getting because uh, Facebook is free, Twitter is free. The system is set up to be free with ads. So it has to be that the ads have to be super specific and everything gets paid for by the ads. So
Hmm.
it learns your behaviors from the ads. So everything that you do, everything you say, everything you believe, everything you know gets tracked, and it's getting really scary specific. All of your data is getting mined. So it knows things about you that you don't even realize. And
Yeah.
it's scary. Like I can't even like tell you about like your how much like your innermost desires, like your it can get down to like because you put on Twitter like your people like will put out their thoughts without thinking. People put out like and like people put out like just what because I did it too. They put out your thoughts, you put out what they're eating, what they're doing, who they're meeting with, where they're going, their appointments,
Hmm.
everything. It's they're putting out constantly like where they're going, what they're doing, what they're eating, what they're thinking, what they're believing, who they're with, everything. All this information about themselves. They take pictures. They and it's tracking this all the time. And
You
so
know, I had a very interesting recent experience with this exact same thing, actually. I hope if you're okay with me sharing for a second.
go for it.
So like where I'm living right now is just like a temporary place, right? Because we do want to get a forever home at one point, my partner and I. And we were talking one day about where we want to live, and we were talking about like looking for houses at some point. And a couple days later, I was on Facebook, and mind you, I love Facebook a lot because I mean it's a place where I've created personal and professional connections over the years. But I started finding or like seeing ads popping up in my um, kind of like status feed of uh, property. What is the word I'm thinking of? Uh, People selling property, property companies like advertising houses in this particular area for the price ranges we were talking about. Like, and mind you, we hadn't done a search or anything like that. So the only other alternative is that maybe like
Your microphone picked up your conversation.
yeah, a microphone was, or maybe like because we have Alexa devices, maybe they were, so on and so forth. So, I mean, it didn't like. it didn't scare me necessarily, but I found I was just like, "Oh, like that's."
Why doesn't it scare you?
um Mostly because I'm used to putting all of my stuff out there, so, like, and we'll talk about why later on, but I think I'm just so used to it that, like, I mean, it was
And why
alarming.
aren't you getting paid for that? For them to advertise to you?
That is actually
That's
a very good point. That is a very good point because we are technically doing a service, you know?
right, because if you click on those ads, they get money.
Mhm. Yep, exactly. It's no different than, like, YouTubers that have ads on their videos, like, if you click on an ad like that, YouTuber and the company gets, like, revenue from that. So,
Exactly.
um
But you don't get anything for it, and they
right.
don't. It's all them and Facebook get ads for it, and it's like, you get nothing. You've just sold your data to them for free, and you've gotten nothing for it.
Mhm. Yep. So, like, I won't lie, like, I think it is like, like, it doesn't scare me, but I do find it a bit unsettling, because personally, I don't think that we should be able to have, like, that degree of automation when it comes to presenting information. Like, I feel like we should have complete control over what information we wanna search for and how we search for it, if that makes sense. So So, yeah, I do understand why it can definitely be something that's a bit scary for sure. So that actually transitions us very succinctly into talking about your experiences with social media. So, um, let's talk about your journey on social media before you made the important decision that you made recently.
So, I started on social media a long time ago. Actually, I was just thinking about how I began on social media, and that was with MySpace, like, a long time ago. And I was actually
MySpace.
trying to find my MySpace account, like, but nobody can find their MySpace accounts. And then I was looking at my old YouTube account today on the Wayback Machine, the Internet Archive, and I actually have one of my old YouTube pages archived. Um, but and then I had a Facebook, and I got Facebook around the time that I started in college. And Facebook used to only be for college students. Do you remember that?
Mhm, I do, like, like 2006, 2007.
Right. So I got a Facebook around the time when you could only have it for college students. And so I had a Facebook and then I deleted it. And then I had a Facebook and then I deleted it. And I kept getting Facebooks and then deleting them. And then I got a Facebook and then I had it just recently in the last like couple years. Because I had a Facebook in 2000, I think it was like 13, and then I deleted it in 2000, or I got locked out of it in 2017. And then
Mhm.
I just had a recent 2018 to now. And I was like, learning about all of this stuff with data, and I was like, I can't handle social media anymore. And this isn't the first time I've deleted my social media. When I was in Grand Canyon and Death Valley, I didn't do social media because being out in the desert, you just don't do social media. There's the Wi-Fi is like dial up. I had a flip phone. When I actually graduated college, I was so burnt out from uh, the overuse of technology that I got rid of my phone and I had a flip phone. I had no phone for 6 months. Uh, and then I had a flip phone after that, and that was in 2010. And then when I moved to Grand Canyon in in 2000, 2012, I think it was, I had a flip phone, and just like a little cheap flip phone. So when everybody had a smartphone. So I just I and then when I moved to Seattle, I went back to having a smartphone, but it was such a weird adjustment to have a smartphone again. that I never quite made the adjustment, and it's still weird for me to have a smartphone. Um, I don't use smartphones effectively. I feel much more natural not having social media. Um, I got rid of social media probably about, what has it been, like 3 weeks now?
Mhm.
And the only thing I use my smartphone for now is YouTube, and I have not missed Facebook at all. I haven't had the desire to look at Facebook. I don't miss my Twitter, because the only thing I put on my Twitter was just random thoughts and whatever. And then I had an Instagram, which I used maybe to put photos on every once in a while.
Mhm.
But like, it was just like the interactions that I was getting from these were meaningless. And it was just sort of like, what am I using this for? I, what's the point? I have maybe like I have maybe like 100 friends or so on each of these things. Like, what is the point?
Mhm. Yeah, that I mean, that makes a lot I mean, especially if there are various platforms you don't use often, like, if you don't feel like a distinct connection to them, then I mean, it almost sounds like it was easy for you to let them go because of that too.
Tiffany, I wish I had a flip phone up until 2018, because literally, like, flip phones are like the best. Flip phones are like the best.
I remember having a flip phone, and there are moments where I do miss its simplicity.
They have flip phones now that are like the smart flip phones, but they're not the same as the old brick
Mhm.
phones.
Yeah, I think it's almost impossible to find, uh, stores selling those older flip phones now.
They have they have the, like, burn phones that you can buy, like, for, like, that people get for, like, when they want to, have, like, when they want to get those, like, month-to-month phones.
Oh, yeah, like those, pay-as-you-go phones.
But they use those for, like, burn calls.
Mhm.
So, like,
Yeah,
when you wanna call somebody, but you don't want them to know your real phone number.
right. Um, so, like, I do have a supplemental question that I think would be interesting. So, did you ever find that social media was, like, taxing on mental health at any point?
I did. Um, I So one of the reasons why I deleted social media at one point was because uh, when I deleted it before was because a friend of mine had committed suicide, and so every so often I would get updates like look back on, and it would
Mm,
show me, it would go to like this time last year, or this time 2 years ago, or this time 3 years ago, and it would show me pictures of when they were alive, or like posts of when they were alive.
mhm,
And so I had to delete that Facebook because I kept looking at old chat boxes of conversations with them and old pictures of when they were alive, and um, I I had a hard time saying goodbye to them, and um, really mourning them properly, because I was just so devastated. Because it was just like I wasn't I felt so like upset, and I would get so upset just like looking at that. And it was
mhm,
just like I wasn't it was just like, "Oh, hey, here are pictures of this dead person, and you get to see them every time you log in, and you can't just put them away and say goodbye. You have to, like, be reminded of them every day." So I had to delete that Facebook because I was just like, "I'm just gonna be reminded every time I log in of this person, uh, every time I see them." So I'm sad that I don't have access to those anymore. in a certain way, but also I'm kind of glad because I was able to kind of to let go a little and to say goodbye and to to kind of not dwell
Right. Not get too caught
because
up in that kind of cycle.
yeah, because it was too much.
Yeah.
But it was really hard to let go because it was it was a lot because and I still and don't get me wrong, I still do really miss them. I still do go visit their page every so often, or I did when I had a Facebook. I still would go visit their page and like look at their profile pictures and I would miss them, but it wasn't the same as like looking at old chats and old because
Yeah,
it's
the
like
conversations take that personalness to a whole nother level.
right,
I know, like, because I mean, I know who you're talking about because it's this person was a person we both knew, and and I've had a couple other people take their lives over the years too, and sometimes I know I've had to stop myself looking at conversations because there is like this guilt that wells where it's like, should I have figured something out based on these conversations? Should I like, is it possible that I could have known what was going to happen? You know, and I know that's part of the grieving process, of course,
right,
but having that like intimate connection to all of those um memories almost makes it more difficult. And one of my big struggles, because like I used to delete memories or like say like delete journal entries, so on and so forth, and I ended up stopping doing that because I would struggle with the thought of me deleting those memories as me not honoring that person's memory, like it's very complex, so
right,
it becomes like this very odd cycle of grief, like like it's like social media can sometimes take that grief and suspend it in amber, you know
right.
let's see,
Anyway,
let's
thank you, Igni, for telling me sorry.
yeah, thanks, Igni. David says, I went through a bad breakup and it made it very hard to be constantly reminded with memories. I had to go through every photo, message, and post and memory with him. I've had to do that too. Yep. Um, like I've gone through relationships where I've been like very like open with it on social media, and then like after breaking up, like it just wrecked me. And then like other relationships, I wasn't as open on social media. Like it can be very difficult, especially. If things end. So, yeah, I'm sorry, David, that you've had to go through that. Yeah. So, um, did you ever find, like, kind of building onto it, another discussion question here, did you find that social media was addicting in any way?
Oh my God, yes. So when I moved to Seattle and um I got a flip or a smartphone back, I
Mhm.
was like this all the time. It was just like all of a sudden I was like back in the game and I was just like but, when I first got back into society, it was a little jarring because I was just sort of like I felt kind of discombobulated, and I was like I didn't understand quite how to, like, act, but once I got back into it, I was just like, "Woo," and I was
Mhm.
like it was like how I social distanced myself uh from people on the bus because it was like I was very uncomfortable with because I was getting sexually harassed on the bus and I was having a hard time with all of the homeless people and I was getting having a hard time with dealing with like the pressures of living in a big city. So like I would put my headphones on, I would plug into my phone and I would just like disconnect from people and I would just like plug into my phone and that was where I lived when I was out in the city because it was just like I could tunnel vision, and it was just like I became addicted to it, and then I became addicted to it when I would go home because then I could just live online because I
Mhm.
didn't have anyone to connect to besides my boyfriend. And he was connected to his phone, and I was connected to my phone. And maybe we would have like a little bit of connection here and there, but we were living separately together. And
Right.
it was a very cold time living together, but it was also like we had each other and we would have moments when we would come together, but like we were also half living together, where we were having conversations, but like we had this like barrier between us where we were had our phones in our faces and we weren't really talking to each other.
Yeah, it's almost like sometimes people become automatons, in these types of settings, like where that social connection can't be made because there is that barrier, right? So,
Hmm.
and I've also experienced that as well with social media. I know I won't lie, like sometimes I kind of get like adrenaline rush from social media. And for me, and I'll talk a little bit about this as well, like I've struggled my whole life with people telling me that I shouldn't exist, that I'm invisible, that I should just disappear. And social media became a convenient way for me to not feel as though I am invisible. And that kind of became an adrenaline rush and in a way became addictive. And I had to like confront it over the years because it became like an instance where I would like be on devices constantly because they were my escape. Um, So looking at the comments really quickly, by the way, since we're about 75% of the way through our show, if you have not subscribed to Ari's channel yet, Strange Nothings, please go do so. We got to do plugs, right? Social media plugs.
I
the
know, yeah.
the
We're
amazing
addicted to social
irony.
media. Go check out my channel.
So in light of that, also like this video, all in good humor, right? Um, But Tiffany says, one thing about social media for me is when I was in a toxic relationship or relationships and so invested in a toxic person, social media made it become more difficult um, to escape that type of thing. Hmm. Yep. So, um, so I'll go ahead and start talking about my experiences with social media, if that's okay. Um, I'll say that I have had my own struggles with social media, but for me, at the end of the day, I feel that social media has been more of a benefit for me than a vice. And I have a few reasons why. So when my beginnings on social media started back with message boards. I would join a lot of Godzilla themed message boards and, make accounts. I even created my own at a certain point. And I really I enjoyed having interactions with people, being able to talk about something that I loved because in reality, I didn't have that many people to bond with such things. Eventually, it led to writing, it led to creative outlets, and that was very beneficial. And that ended up leading me to using sites like DeviantArt. In fact, I know Igni from DeviantArt, and that's where we first met. But just these these little nooks and crannies across the internet where I was allowed to pepper my creative outlets in. And that naturally led to MySpace, Facebook, um, and most recently Instagram, YouTube. Actually, YouTube's not recent. I've been using YouTube for quite a long time myself. But and then now Snapchat, which is hit or miss for me. I'm not a huge fan of Snapchat,
Me either.
but I would say that for me, um, social media has been a catalyst to help me reduce, like I was saying earlier, my invisibility. Because if you've watched my videos lately, you've probably heard me talking about the horrible things that were said to me by people in my life, whether it be family members or bullies. And usually the common thing was this theme of being told that I shouldn't exist, that I should be invisible, that I take up too much space in this world. And over the years, like I've been fighting this urge to reduce the space that I take up, and that has manifested itself in a variety of different ways, ranging from like ideation to like problematic like dietary habits, so on and so forth. And I've been talking with my therapist recently about this as well, but social media for me has become these different modes for me to help subvert that desire to reduce myself to fading away or to being invisible, if that makes sense. And I've kind of justified it as like by me putting out creative things like into the world through social media, or like me doing YouTube videos, me like posting something educational on Facebook. I justify that as taking pieces of myself and putting them out on platforms where there is a certain degree of preservation. Like I'm taking what I feel like I can't express and I'm preserving it out in the world in some way. I know it probably sounds very strange, but the mind works strangely, and that's very much how I have.
No, I see your point. I like it.
Well, thank you. That's how I've gotten through it. Now, that's not to say that I've not had my own woes with social media. Um, like I've had instances where, like I've had to remove myself from social media temporarily, like maybe for a few days or so, just to kind of like
Get
pick up
yourself
my
in the headspace.
right, to kind of like lift my head up and like and sense reality, or like be one with nature, so on and so forth. I think I've managed to balance that over the years much more.
Hmm.
But like I know like recently, like with the pandemic and like very divisive politics, like I've had many situations recently where I've had to just take like step away from social media for a few days to kind of regain my footing or to catch my breath. And I don't think there's any shame in people doing that. And in fact, I don't think there's shame in people removing themselves entirely from social media like you have. If you find that social media is becoming more taxing for you than it is beneficial, then it's important that you do what's best for your own situation. And interestingly, Igni also mentioned social media is like food. You got to balance everything out in moderation, right? Exactly. hmm Tiffany said, social media has its faults, but it honestly saved my life. I found some of my best friends because of it. Same. And in fact, Tiffany and I met through social media. Arby and I met through social media. Like a lot of my followers, like we've connected through this. Um, Now, another thing that I know social media has helped me with over the past few months is maintaining a sense of connection, especially during the pandemic, like especially the beginning portions where everything was like shut down. Like it was very difficult to make connections with people because I mean, you can't see them, you couldn't see them face to face. So like in many ways, technology became our saving grace for a while, right? Because otherwise we really wouldn't have been able to maintain those connections as effectively. I mean, of course, phone calls, so on and so forth, but um,
Letters. I do
yeah, or
letters.
letters. Yeah, I won't lie though. Like, I do kind of get a certain fulfillment out of like writing letters and like writing email. Like Ari and I communicate solely through email right now, and it's really neat. Um, but like, because I think like and I'm this is kind of a digression. I apologize. That's what I do best. But I think instant messengers.
I
Kind
miss AIM. Do you miss
oh
AIM?
God, I do. I do. I miss AIM and
The
I miss.
little away message when you would click on it and be like this long, like, I'm
Yep.
away from my computer right now.
But for me, it was between AIM or Yahoo Messenger. I loved both of them.
I had both, yes.
But like I feel like instant messaging, whether it be those old school instant messengers or social media instant messengers, I feel like they kind of force us to have more disjointed conversational processes, if that makes sense. Whereas in an email, you can kind of take your thoughts and wrap them up in a little box and put a little bow on top and send it, like it's a very odd metaphor, but
Do you remember having like sending emails like back in the early days? I used to be a person who would send several emails at once, and I would have like several ideas floating at the same time. So I would be like talking about one philosophical issue while I was talking about another issue, and I would be like
Mhm.
bouncing ideas at the same time.
Yep.
It'd be like it would be
Yep.
really intense.
Same, same. David mentioned, oh, I remember AOL, Yahoo, ICQ. Oh my God, I forgot about that. Wasn't that like the little flower icon one? I know there was MSN, that was like the little butterfly. So many. I'm feeling super nostalgic right now. Um,
We need a messenger service, to come back and just have it open. Like, there's GChat, you can still do GChat, but,
oh
like, who
yeah.
uses GChat anymore?
All right. I know, like I just think that a site needs to capitalize on millennial nostalgia, or even like Gen, um, Gen X nostalgia, and and do something like this, like retro site with like all that stuff. Igni says Kaiju Galaxy needs a messenger. We tried finding a messenger for the site. The best we could get is that shout box,
I like the
unfortunately.
shout box.
Me too. I do enjoy it. And if we need to like have a private conversation there, like we usually just use like a private messaging thing, but it's more like emailing. Anyway, okay, so super duper digressing. Now, like probably the last benefit that I have found with social media would be social media being used as a tool to promote education and social justice. And I think this has been especially important recently because a lot of Black Lives Matter movement related aspects have been largely powered by social media efforts, mobilized through like groups, like Facebook groups, like live sessions, live feeds in general, and I think that's I think it's important to consider that, and I think while a lot of people can share like misinformation and have it perpetuate like wildfire, I think there's also potential for social media to be used to spread reliable information, educational aspects. I think I live in this kind of this world of rainbows and sunshine because I always like believe that people will make the right decision and share like good, wholesome educational things. Not always the case, but I think as social media users, we need to look at the power that social media gives each of us because it does give us a power to disseminate information, and ask ourselves if we're using it in a positive way that is beneficial for people around us, Um, and I like especially with Facebook and YouTube, I ask myself those things all the time because if I put something out that could potentially be destructive, like I would never want that to harm people. And I really wish that, say, like politicians, so on and so forth, would think of that before putting out a lot of the things that they put out.
Such as our president talking about wanting to cancel the election.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Uh yeah. Well, and we've seen him use Twitter to spread a lot of unreliable information, and unfortunately many who support him like will like kind of take that information at face value and believe it without thinking of, well, the resource that I'm looking at is actually social media, it's unreliable sometimes, yada yada yada. And it just shows you that like the social media is a tool, and a tool can be used for destructive purposes and it can also be used for beneficial purposes, and it reflects on the people who use them when it comes to what they choose to do with those powers, if that makes sense.
I think that there's a lot of really good stuff on, say, like TikTok, as far as beneficial social media change. Um,
Oh,
I
yes.
know that TikTok definitely has its drawbacks as far as like Chinese surveillance, but I believe that there's a lot of really good information and a lot of good social media gathering
Right.
as far as social justice on TikTok.
Well,
Um,
let's use an example also. The president was going to hold a rally. Was it in Tulsa, Oklahoma? I can't
it
remember.
was
It was,
Tulsa, yeah.
yeah, it was somewhere in Oklahoma. And TikTok users decided to book tickets because they weren't sold or anything like that. They
The
were just
K-pop kids.
like K-pop fans and other TikTok users mobilized to, in a way, sabotage um
His rally.
yeah, like his rally, and there were a lot of people who weren't there. Like that act in of itself is, I think, an empowering act, because it gave, like, that social media platform gave people the power to mobilize to do something like that. um Taylor mentioned in the chat box that TikTok is spreading some dangerous ideas, though, particularly religiously. Yes, I also agree with that too. I've seen, like, not only those types of things, but I've seen people do, like, really destructive challenges that could be, like, physically dangerous. Um, like, it can be,
I
like,
guess it depends on what corner of TikTok you go in.
right, right. Like, TikTok is it's kind of alarming how large it's become, but it's become very big. But again, it comes back down to, like, again, it's a tool. People can choose to use that tool for good or for negative things, right? Now, it's like, and it begs the question of, like, should such things be regulated, or would regulating such things be, like, hindering freedom of speech? I know that's been a debate that's been happening for over a decade now. RP actually mentions that um, people are making fun of autistic people on TikTok. I did see that. Uh, my friend Cindy, who goes by Stream of Awareness here, did actually a video recently about that, talking about, like, kind of calling out that type of behavior.
Of
And
course there. That sounds
yeah,
terrible.
hmm it's just really sad um, that something like this could be used for such great things, but there's always going to be bad people using the tools for very negative purposes.
Yeah.
Igny's like, thank you for not saying evil, good and evil. I know I felt that saying evil would have been too cheesy and melodramatic, so that's why I didn't didn't say it. Um, Now, like, one, because we're getting close to being done here. Um, so there is one other thing. Like, I did post the question of, should one always be expected to educate and promote social justice on social media? And I said no, because I think that people should do those things if they are feeling as though they have the, you know, capability of doing so. Like, if they're surrounded by the proper people that might help spread the information positively, or if they, are in a safe, like, because, like, people can be in unsafe environments on social media as much as they can be in unsafe environments in reality, right?
Mhm.
um I know for me, like, I very much consider myself a social justice educator, but there are times where that responsibility gets very taxing, and you have to give yourself a break from time to time. There's no shame in that. And Tiffany says, and I think this is extremely important, social media can also be used to spread positivity and love and kindness to those who struggle with mental health issues and other struggles. I definitely agree with that too. So I guess at the end of the day, it's important that we consider how social media kind of acts as extensions of who we are, you
Mhm.
know, but we have to make sure that we balance that so we don't burn ourselves out, uh,
Exactly.
or tax ourselves when it comes to mental health. If you need to withdraw from social media for a while, go for it. If you need to maybe take a couple days away from it, go for it. If you need to delete one social media but have another one, go, like, it's like you have the power to do that. That's what makes it so important, you know.
Exactly.
So, Ari, my dear friend, do you have any parting words for our friends?
The power is in your hands.
Whether you use it for good or evil. Sorry, I had to finally do that. Sorry, Igni. um,
I think that's
I,
a good one. Yeah.
what a way to end, right? Anyway, dear friends, thank you for joining us again. It's hard to believe we've done 9 episodes so far. The next episode, we're really excited and we're going to be nerding out a bit actually, because Ari and I are going to be talking about, we're going to watch a couple of Godzilla movies and we're going to be talking about the films on a pretty deep level. And we're hoping that you may find it interesting. So, if you are wanting to watch them yourselves, they are the films Godzilla against Mechagodzilla and Godzilla Tokyo SOS.
Yeah,
So,
we're keeping it pretty light next
yep,
week.
we're keeping it pretty light. Like, we've decided that we're going to do a few episodes talking about like very deep things like this, and then we're going to do episodes like here and there where we pepper in some like light-hearted conversation about some fun stuff. So, anyway, of course, thank you for tuning in, and we will see you again next week. We love you.
Bye.
Bye.